Skippy02 here. Got a quick little video regarding stippling. You probably know what it is, probably familiar with it. If you're not, here's essentially what it is. It's when you take something that essentially looks like this here, standard PMAG la-di-da, and you add a finish, something like so. Now, there are a lot of companies out there that are now doing and offering this finish and refinish to your personal items or on their new items and whatnot, and it is very expensive. But if you don't feel like spending that amount of money to have somebody else do it, why not do it yourself? That was where I found myself at. I was like, I really like the way that feels. I like the additional grip, the texturing, the tactile presence it has. I love it. But I didn't want to pay, $20, $30 to get my PMAG done. I didn't want to pay upwards of $300 to get my Glocks done. So I started tinkering with it myself. Here's what we got. First thing you need, simple soldering iron. Pick these up most anywhere, Radio Shack, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever. Don't need to be anything high dollar, don't need to be anything fancy. This happens to be an old soldering iron I've owned for years and years. Low wattage, this is a 30 watt, 120 volt soldering iron. Simply plug it into the wall and give it a few minutes to heat up. Does a trick just fine. One tip I would give you is your tip, you want to keep it or get it as sharp as possible. I actually had sharpened this one down to where it was nearly needle-like, and I found that that was a little too small of an indentation that it made, so I blunted it back down with my trusty hammer and whatnot. Also, you'll see that I put a bend in it that makes it a little more ergonomically good to go as opposed to the straight up and down. This gets very tiring after several hundred, if not a couple thousand repetitions. So get you a cheap little soldering iron, get you a little sponge, damp sponge, wet sponge, or in my case an old piece of rag soaking wet in a little cup. You'll use that for cleaning and wiping your tip occasionally. It will get some residue and so forth built on it. But here's all you got to do. PMAGs are the perfect example. If you manage to somehow ruin this and completely screw it up somehow, you're only out a $10 or $12 PMAG versus, say, your $600, $700 whatever polymer pistol. So, if you feel as though you want to try this at home, start with something that, is not going to be the end of the world if you manage to totally wreck it. Although I don't really see how you can do that unless you're just completely cuckoo. But here's the deal. Take your soldering iron once it's good and hot. Pick you a point, kind of visualize yourself a little pattern, and just go to it and begin repeating that process over and over and over. On the PMAGs, I like stippling out the ridged ribs, or the raised ribs I should say. I've experimented with a few different patterns. Initially I was doing a very broad pattern. It was something like the fifth side of a die with the 4 points and then one in the middle, repeated over and over and over across the process. I found that to be almost too coarse feeling. The way it actually felt in your hand was very, very coarse. So what I did is I ended up going back and adding some additional stipples, indentations, what have you, that were slightly smaller. What I found that works good for me particularly, and that is me, it is going to vary from person to person and application to application, but again, 30 watt soldering iron, relatively sharp tip, and what I like to do is just lay it on there and I count 1, 2, 3, and then I repeat 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Obviously I don't sit here in my head and count out loud 1, 2, 3, 500 times or whatever, but that's about all it takes. I don't apply a lot of pressure. I just kind of let the heat and the point do its work and repeat over and over and over. And here I'll just go ahead and do a few more and show you kind of what I'm talking about. And like I said, don't be afraid to experiment. You want to give this a shot at home, I encourage you to do it. But remember, once you take it out, you can't put it back. So if you go too far or too much, forget about it. So start with maybe a 1 second and see if you like that result. Then maybe try 3 seconds, or if you don't like that result, maybe go up to 5 seconds, or whatever. Play around with it a little bit, and try to have some fun at it. Although that seems kind of silly, because I got to tell you, it's very monotonous. It's time consuming. You do not want to rush. As soon as you start rushing, you're going to find that you've made yourself a hell of a mess. But anyway, so you see what I'm doing there. That basically gets the point across. And you see all it took was, a cheap, simple soldering iron available anywhere. And then whatever you have laying around, if you've got a PMAG, or you've got some of those plastic cheese grater panels to put on your railed fore ends and whatnot. But here's what you end up with. Obviously I started smooth, factory finish, which, nobody really complains that the PMAG doesn't have enough texture or grip or feel to it. Nobody does. But once you begin adding this finish to it, smooth, textured, the difference is night and day. And after an hour or so of tinkering around, you end up with something along these lines. And maybe you don't have the time, maybe you're not interested, whatever, but you want something like this, you can buy the little decals that insert and overlap and this kind of thing, that are nothing more than skateboard tape. Basically, I'm not crazy about that. They peel off, they wear out. You could buy PMAGs that are already stippled. I've seen them as high as $50 a piece. Somebody told me that they've seen them higher. Maybe so. But this is my $10 PMAG, and with maybe an hour of honest work and experimentation and so forth, I'm really happy with it. And I think you would probably be the same. So anyway, that's basic stippling. It's really not that hard, and I would encourage you to try it yourself at home. See what you think. Or, hey, I could use a few extra bucks. If you don't feel as though you're up to the task, give me a shout. I'll do it for you, but I'm going to get paid just like everybody else. In the meantime, take care, stay safe, and as always, God bless.